under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please remember to silence your phones, pagers. Do we have any citizen concerns? Hearing none, I will move approval of today's agenda.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Taylor to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 4 through 7 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 4, approval of the minutes of the September 18, 2018 meeting. 5 is approval of claims. 6, county treasurer. Item A is approval of resolution for tax abatement for the United States of America. Item B, approval of resolution for a tax abatement for Woodbury County. Item 7, human resources, approval of memorandum of personnel transaction. I will move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Ung. Further questions on the consent agenda? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 8, approval of Pearson source water protection planning support and promotion. Did you get your answers that you wanted out of that, Mr. Raddick?
Yeah, I did. It's essentially following the same chart, essentially the same curve as every other river in Iowa. I mean, I don't see the point of it, but if you guys want to vote to do it, I'm not going to stop you.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Motion by Potabom, second by Taylor to approve Pearson source water protection planning support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Passes 4-1. Mr. Raddick opposed.
And I see, Mr. Chair, that we need to designate a representative. I was going to nominate Mr. Raddick.
Seems
But
only,
if anybody else would like to volunteer, or I don't know if that's an assignment, but there's a representative that needs to be designated, I see.
I can't think of a more fitting person. Do we need a vote on that?
I think it's just a chair appointment, isn't it?
Are we done with item 8?
I think, is that something that you want to designate in the future?
If that's needed, sure.
Potentially.
I think that's part of it, is that we need to have a designee from the board to be present during the.
There should be a motion to designate a representative.
I will make a motion to designate a representative.
Have the chair designate the representative.
I'll do it if nobody else is. I'll go to at least 2 of them.
Well, when do they start?
You may never do it. It's just that since it may be needed.
Yeah.
And if you can't, I'll be glad to fill in for you
Okay.
too. So
Appreciate it.
you just say you'll designate someone, we'll take care of it.
I will designate someone, and Mr. Taylor and Potabom will take care of it.
Sounds good. You want
anything else?
I need a second.
Second.
just to designate a representative.
Second.
Second by Potabom. Do we need a vote?
If you have a motion, yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 9, Community Economic Development. Mr. Gleiser, approval of final plat for Sort of Heaven Addition, a minor subdivision.
Thank you, David Gleiser, Director of Community and Economic Development. Supervisors, this is a minor subdivision for a parcel of ground that are currently owned by Kenneth and Kelly Boyle. They want to split 29.31 acres into 2 lots. As part of the transaction of the person buying the ground, Brian Birkenpass, his lenders are requiring them to split the property. So the homestead will be financed from one lender and the farm ground will be financed through a different lender. I think it's worth noting that during the public hearing at the zoning commission, we reviewed this plat twice, last month and the month before. The first time that the plat was proposed, there were 6 lots penciled out on the subdivision plat. You know, notice goes out to the property owners within 1,000 feet, and we had a number of neighbors come and say that they wanted to oppose the residential development of that piece of ground. The surveyor informed the audience at that meeting that it was just simply the bank's requirements and that he would talk to his client to see if he would be interested in just splitting the house from the farm ground just into 2 lots to make sure that everybody knows that it wouldn't be further subdivided. So the surveyor came and worked with our office, and then in consultation with Secondary Roads and the county attorney's office, we were able to come to a determination that the existing easement of 30 feet would be sufficient for the 2-lot subdivision that was being proposed. We did have some discussion and some disagreement with some of the members of the zoning commission. You'll see in the draft minutes that it was a split vote, 3-2. There were 2 zoning commission members that wanted to see the easement be enlarged to 40 feet. Again, it was the opinion of county staff that 30-foot wide easement was sufficient for the 2-lot subdivision. And there was a request to widen it to 40 feet. The person that owns the land was not necessarily willing to give the additional 10 feet in easement. And they also wanted to put a restrictive covenant and impose that as a condition to approving the subdivision plat, so that there couldn't be any further development in that quarter section. Of course, you know, through the zoning ordinance, there could be potentially 2 houses in that quarter subdivision, and the applicant wasn't necessarily excited about agreeing to a restrictive covenant because he didn't know what would happen in the future. Long story short, the board voted, the commission voted to approve recommendation to the Board of Supervisors of the plat as proposed. After the last zoning commission meeting, the applicant and the neighboring property owner came to an agreement, and they were able to secure the deal that the couple of the commissioners wanted. That being an extra 10 feet in easement and putting a restrictive covenant of not allowing more than 1 house in that quarter section. So I included those as attachments, just so you're aware of that. And then I also just wanted to make the board aware that we do have intentions of presenting some draft language on the section of the ordinance that we had some differing interpretations on as far as staff and a few of the zoning commissioners. So I think we've realized what sort of wordsmithing needs to happen in order to make it abundantly clear and leave little room for interpretation. So
the current building and house sits on lot 1?
yes.
But
Well, there's an accessory structure in a house that's on lot 1, and then there's a big horse arena, big horse barn on lot 2, and then some fencing for livestock.
so lot 2 is a potential to have another home and/or accessory structure and whatnot on it. I thought there had to be a 200-foot minimum frontage.
The way that the proposed plat is drawn, it could facilitate a house and still have 200 feet.
Is it? The print is so small I can't read it, but.
But other than that, staff recommend approval of the plat as proposed, and the applicant and the neighbor We'll be recording the other documents when the subdivision plat is recorded in the auditors, in the recorder's office.
Sure.
Chairman, is there anybody from the public that's here to weigh in on this, or?
I'm not seeing anybody.
And short of that, and I respect the work of the commission, even though it was a split vote, if it's a staff recommendation as well, I think that those decisions are best vetted in that venue. I'd move to receive the zoning commission's recommendation from their September 10th commission meeting to approve the final plat.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Potabom. Any further discussion or questions?
Since the plat is called Sorta Heaven, is there going to be like a baseball field, Field of Dreams kind of thing going?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I struck out with that one.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. Passes 4-1. DeWitt opposed.
I'd move to approve the Sort of Heaven minor subdivision plat and authorize the chairman to sign the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Ung. Further questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Item 10, Human Resources, approval to create a deduction for Four Seasons Health Club membership fees to be taken directly from employees' payroll.
Hi, I'm Melissa Thomas, Human Resources. I'm here today to ask for a motion to create a deduction for Four Seasons. They have also teamed up with Mercy Business. So this week we'll go together with our wellness program. People can actually gain points by going to the gym. I do have folks from Four Seasons if you have any questions. I have to get together with Michelle so we can actually create the process for it to happen. So,
Which employee are we going to deduct all this from?
all of them who want to go to the gym.
Or we're just picking one?
Any other?
Well, I said only employee because they will only take the employee out of the check. As far as the family and that type of membership, that will come directly from the employee. So,
Is there a further discount, Melissa, from doing it by auto deduction?
I don't understand the question. Like if you're
Well, it
doing it
seems like-
now directly from your check, or
Seems like it's it'd be $18 a month.
right? It's 26 pay period, so $18 a month. Whereas corporate rate now for single is 32. So
It's part of the price, which is an excellent deal for the county, so.
yes, very good discounts for us. And all it can do is help our health plan, and hopefully, our employees will become healthier. Any questions?
I'd move it.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Ung. Any further questions for Melissa and/or Four Seasons Management?
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Item 11, Secondary Roads, approve contract for PCC patching project number. PCC patching 2018.
We have a signed contract for board consideration with a 10-Point Construction Company of Denison, Iowa for $101,085.08 for PCC patching. This work will be done on concrete blow-ups and other pavement damage that we've suffered over the past 12 months. I recommend approval of the contract.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ung, second by Radig to approve the contract. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Item 12, County Sheriff, approval of purchase of tables, chairs, desks, and audio-visual equipment for the Sheriff's Office Training Center.
Good evening. Todd Wick, Sheriff's Office. We are looking for funding for furniture for the new training center. Tables in each classroom, chairs, AV equipment for each classroom. The bid also on the AV equipment there includes the ability to open up the center wall and use both monitors simultaneously if you've got a large class. And I have had the chance or the opportunity to talk to Mr. Butler about the funding and where it could come from, and I think he's got some ideas.
In our gaming revenue, we do have about $184,000 unobligated for the current fiscal year. This would tie in a little bit because we are paying our lease purchase part of the cost from our gaming revenues. Another possibility that we talked about today a little bit, but didn't bring this up, this could be the revenue avenues. We did get money back from the health plan we have with the nursing contract with ACH, and that amounted around $84,000. That was unanticipated, so it's extra revenue that right now is sitting in our cash reserves to help our cash reserves get up to the 22%. We're gaining on that quite a bit. So you really have two places you could take it from, but gaming revenue would probably be the best one because that's a one-time expenditure.
The savings was already put back into reserves, or it's?
Yes, put back. The money was
Last.
the general basic fund,
Okay.
which was unanticipated. We had no idea if we're going to get any money back or even have to pay more, but in this case, we did get money back for last fiscal year.
Okay.
Why would we not just wait till budget time and do it then?
I think they need the furniture now, so we need to determine where we're going to pay from.
What about from the other building?
This is for the training center, isn't it?
Right, but the furniture they used before.
We had one small classroom over there. The tables that we're using now that are sitting in there don't even fill half the classroom. We've got two large classrooms. We're looking at 36 tables, I think 102 chairs, AV equipment, and we've already got classes lined up. People are wanting to use the building.
It just seems like poor preparation to start the building, not have furniture budgeted for it if you weren't going to use the old, and then come mid-fiscal year again and ask for the money for furniture. That's where I'm at again. Is it just the sheriff's department that does this? Or, I mean, the last thing was the computer software.
I think there was a lot of issues with getting Prairie Hill closed and getting something for the sheriff's office to use for training because we couldn't afford to keep Prairie Hill going.
I get that, but we knew the building was going to be open this year.
Well,
right? I mean, the sheriff knew that anyway.
I guess I would just say it may have been in the overall scope of things that that wasn't accounted for in the original lease purchase cost, but it was assumed that there would be measures, especially when we were talking about a conference center and using for training. And if looking at what's there right now, I mean, it's got to be 20, 25 years old. Not that you can't, maybe get by with it, but just it would seem odd to, I think, put it in there and expect for high quality professional classes to take place. So I'd personally be in favor of using the reserves if that was unanticipated. My worry about using gaming is at the point where do we go upside down and, I don't know.
And gaming revenues, you can do basically anything.
Oh, I know we can't.
You're locked in a little bit with general basic. So general basic would be fine.
What do you mean upside down?
Well, I mean, matching expenditures, if we're, have we projected out over the next 12 months gaming revenues matching with whatever we have obligated right now?
For this fiscal year we have.
Okay.
For next fiscal year, that'll come up budget time.
I guess what I'm alluding to is I want to make sure that we keep gaming somewhat healthy, and if we had an unanticipated revenue source, to me it would make sense to building up reserves is good, but we'll still be able to do that. That's just where I'm at.
I guess I'm just the other way. I'd rather use gaming because it's a one-time expenditure, and to me, that's what gaming works the best for, and try to build that reserve back up. I mean, that's just my personal feeling. To me, that's what gaming revenues are for, is one-time expenditures and. I'm sorry,
I can go either way.
cut you off.
If it was,
You're fine.
if it was in the current year, I could see using the sheriff's extra funds, so to speak, but once it hits reserves, it's kind of in a big pot of everything else that's been saved and unanticipated, and how do you take advantage of that and going, so I'd support the gaming approach.
And if we use general reserves, we would have to amend the budget. Where with gaming revenues, when I budgeted.
Well,
I budgeted-
should have mentioned that right up front.
Oh, by the way,
Or add that, 'cause if we start using reserves, but yes, and gaming, we don't have it, because I budget the money and leave it as unobligated, but yet available to spend, so we don't have to do budget amendments every time we turn around.
But at the same time, I do agree that it would be ideal for this to have been in part of the fiscal budget, just knowing what we're going to have placed here. We may not know the exact dollar amount, but it would be safe to have some sort of budget.
As an aside, you're talking about getting some revenue back from other entities using our building?
Correct.
And how much were they planning on paying for rent this time?
I think we've got one class lined up. I'm not sure. I think they're looking at paying us a significant amount of money to use the building to hold a class. I don't have an exact amount. But this is something that can be used by other agencies. So this isn't just for the sheriff's office only, the Woodbury County Sheriff's Office exclusively. There will be other agencies using this building too, and they'll be
Well, I've seen the state patrol using our shooting range, and
all the time. All the time.
Just make sure they say thank you.
sir,
Any revenue we get such as rent, we are gonna put it in our our training center fund to help reduce our costs from our gaming revenue. So if we say we get 5,000 rent, that'll reduce our costs out of gaming revenue, because we'll just replace it.
have you set up a separate line item in division for that purpose?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole separate fund. We're keeping lease purchase plus now the furniture will pay it out of that, but the rent will go into that fund as a revenue, so we'll see how much rent does come in. And we're limited how much rent we can collect before it becomes a taxable piece of property. The city ran into that with the airport lodging down there. That's tax exempt, but if they're collecting rent for it, assessor's gonna assess it. So we have to be a little careful on how much we can collect in rent.
I'd move the purchase of tables, chairs, desks, and AV equipment for the training center from gaming revenue in the amount of $31,404.
Second.
motion by Taylor, second by Potabom. Any further questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay.
No?
Motion passes 4-1. Mr. Radig opposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Item 13 is one that I am bringing up for an information item. Today, in the interest of operation of all-terrain and off-road utility vehicles on county roadways in unincorporated areas, basically mirroring what Sac County has. Right now, as I understand it, agriculture landowners can traverse on county roads between parcels to check crops, carry parts, fuel, those kind of things. I am looking for interest in creating an ordinance that would allow these vehicles to run basically, like I said, mirroring Sac counties with certain restrictions, sunrise to sunset, 18 years of old and older, four-wheel, no less than 4 wheels on the machine, items like that. Any questions?
May I comment?
You may.
I know Sac County has an ordinance on this. State law does allow the Board of Supervisors to designate certain county roads for use by ATVs. I recommend strongly against doing that, however. We've already had one fatality from illegal use of an ATV on a county road this year. One of our goals in cooperation with Federal Highway Administration is towards 0 deaths. I'm concerned about the use of ATVs leading toward the possibility of more deaths. I have 5 studies in my file. If I had noticed this was on today, I would have got them in the board's hands, but I have that accident report and 4 studies, including one done by the Off-Road Recreational Vehicle Association, which is the association that manufactures these vehicles, that does not recommend them as an on-road vehicle. Plymouth County had this same request, and their board turned it down. I think it's kind of a mixed bag of some counties allowing it, other counties not allowing it. We do already have issues with damage done to our roads by use that is not agricultural, where they're turning donuts in our intersections. We've had ruts up to 3-4 inches deep cut by young people doing that. One regularly occurs north of my shop. Our staff's seen him. We haven't troubled the sheriff's office with it. By the time they had any chance to get there, I'm sure the perpetrator would be long gone. This does create safety concerns for our department. I would sooner not see us go down this path. If we do pursue it, I would say it would have to be a highly restrictive group of roads. Licensed drivers would be a requirement, but I think you would find violations of that once you open the door to it, unless we have the Sheriff's Department checking everybody that's out there on the roads. Once they've got a helmet on, assuming they bother to wear proper safety equipment, I see it as a real problem and potential safety issue. I don't think the county would get any liability for it. I'd want to consult Joshua on that by allowing it, but I still think this is an unnecessary ordinance and allows the opportunity for additional accidents on county roads that are preventable by just leaving our current rules in place. So, thank you for the opportunity to express that. I will get copies of those studies in your hands. And again, the one I would look at, besides the fatal accident report that I'll send along, would be the information from the Off-Road Vehicle Manufacturers Association. Thank you.
Major Wick, could you speak for the sheriff's office on this topic, or do you have any knowledge of what their general thought process is?
I'm prepared.
Okay.
Reserve that until I get you.
Okay. Thank you. Sir.
Chairman DeWitt, you did bring this up to me a couple times in the last several months on, as far as an idea for the policy committee. My recollection is I responded, send me a template or an example. I never received that, but that's fine if we want to discuss it at the board level as far as an ordinance, because that is a stronger sort of board action. But is it safe to say that you support it?
It's safe to say that I'm leaning towards supporting it. I've had several rural people mention it. I know that, and this is not making it right, wrong, or otherwise, but almost every municipality out in the county has a sunrise to sunset, golf carts, ATVs, things like that. To my knowledge, without any serious problems. I haven't heard of any. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying I haven't heard of them. I'm interested in it. It would be leaning towards it if the vote was today. There actually are some things that I would change in here. I would not allow three-wheelers, and I think there was something in there that would allow that. I'm not understanding why they're against a firearm being carried on there when, if all else is legal with concealed carry permits and so forth like that, as far as loaded vehicles in vehicles during hunting season, those kind of things. This is not an exact, I did not bring the Sac County's ordinance with my markings and scribblings on it, but probably 85 to 88% of the Sac County's ordinance would be acceptable.
I know the firearm deal is because they don't want people to drive hunt.
Well, they have that, the DNR doesn't like that either, but as long as you've got a concealed weapons permit, you may drive with a loaded uncased firearm in your car or truck, and it's still illegal to shoot from the road, but yes, I get that.
Sure.
But, sir?
Just first blush, I mean, I generally like the intent, and it does specify 18 years of age or older and a valid Iowa driver's license. I'd like to see us reach out, you know, Sac County, Chair Rick Hecht, and is one of the finest supervisors I know. I'd like to see what their experience is before and after, because we should know, you know, based on their experience. They obviously passed this more recently at some point, and see what their experience has been, and I think that would be helpful in the discussion. I would like to see as well, to the county engineer's point, if there's something, and I know teeth in any ordinance is only as good as the enforcement, and I understand that, but something that would be protective of those who are doing malicious harm to our roads, you know, in an intentional manner that can be followed up on. Again, I know that might just be language, but I would like to see something in there that specifies that if you're using this in such a way to cause material damage, that's something that...
Yeah, I think we would want to have that. As far as I'm concerned, it's vandalism.
Sure.
When they're out there and they cut those kind of ruts in a roadway. I think one of the difference between this and allowing the golf carts within the city is you're in a city with relatively low speed limits. You're in exclusively two-wheel drive vehicles, typically with golf carts. With ATVs, you're dealing with four-wheel drive vehicles that are designed for use on dirt, trails, those kind of things. It's a very different environment when they're up on gravel or pavement. And when you've got that all-wheel drive engaged in those cases, it can lead to control issues. They're also capable of much higher speed than what a golf cart is. I think these are the things that are cited in that Off-Road Vehicle Manufacturers Association document as well, that make them less than suitable for being up on top of the roads. Yeah, I would only see how much fun is it just to drive up and down the road. I think once we make it illegal to do that, it probably would lead to an increase in damage and people trying to do spins on the road. And that was cited in that fatal accident study by the deputy. He noted that it appeared as though the individual was getting ready to do a donut when he lost control of the vehicle. So, again, this is a use of the roads that gives me great concern, not only from the damage but also from the safety issues. I'd be curious to hear what Sac County knows too. I know their county engineer. I can reach out to him as well.
Yeah, I think.
But I'd encourage you to talk with them and see what issues may have been reported. Thank you.
I do know a lot of the smaller four-wheel ATVs are kind of being used less and less in general because of the farm-related accidents. And I think there was a teenager nearby that just went out to check on the cattle and rolled the ATV, and family found him a few hours later dead. So, I mean, that can happen on or off the road. And out at Bronson, when we had our meeting out there, almost the plurality of vehicles at that county meeting were larger all-terrain vehicles, the Gators, and, you know, and I think maybe if we specify more of those type of vehicles over four-wheelers.
And not to argue the point, but it is not just golf carts that were okayed in these smaller municipalities. No. It's
well, in Sioux City, I don't know that. I know South Sioux okayed four-wheelers, and I don't remember Sioux City ever doing it, but there's four-wheelers all over the gravel roads east of 75 in Sioux City. And there's nothing the police department can do to even catch them because they just go off-road or...
And in fairness, there was a successful event that was done under permit of the Board of Supervisors back, I want to say it was either 2013 or 2014, where one of the off-road ATV clubs did an event similar to a tractorcade and used a number of county roads. They policed after themselves. They made sure that nobody was operating unsafely, and it was a safe and enjoyable event for those people who participated. You know, I would not hesitate to recommend an event like that happening again, but general and unrestricted use of these on the roads is something that does give me a great deal of concern, obviously, or wouldn't be up here
Voicing it.
yeah, beating a dead horse, maybe.
And in fairness to Mr. Nara, when I mentioned it to him some time ago, he expressed his displeasure with my idea immediately, so. But since I've had other folks from the rural areas inquire about it, I'm presenting it in this fashion and presenting it to the board for further discussion if it warrants or goes there.
Maybe that's a good journal poll for the county residents there.
I'm open for discussion. My worry is the safety, because they do sit lower than most vehicles and all, and you're right, they do have a greater speed. I don't like passing rules to try to protect people from themselves or to punish the vast majority of people, because a few of them are going to be yahoos out there. So I'm not against this, but I would like to look at it a little bit more.
And no, not trying to okay what's already going on, but I probably count a half a dozen going in front of my house every evening, you know, of all
People
sizes.
are already doing it.
They wouldn't be breaking the rules, would they?
That is not my,
The rules just need to catch up with them.
My other concern with these is liability insurance and things like that. Because if they hit, you know, it's one thing rolling your own, but if you hit something else, are you insured? I don't know, because they're not registered, are they? It's been a long time since I've ridden one of these things, you can tell. Because they never needed registrations, licenses, anything else. So is there an insurance requirement if you're going to be on our roads? I think there's just some more things to look into. But I'm willing to discuss it.
It's a worthwhile question, because if it's comes down to fatalities, well, more people die in car accidents every year on roads than ATVs, but we still let them drive their cars on the road.
But they're registered and they have insurance.
Right. Well, not all of them, but
Well, or they pay.
That's right.
They're supposed to have insurance. Again, not that everybody follows the rules.
So I defer for more information, or
It was just information anyways.
that's fine with me. Let's carry on. Well, I and any other supervisor that wishes can.
Mr. Chair, do you know, are there any other counties besides Sac County that have done similar?
Not locally, I don't know. I don't know about Monona.
I think Dakota did.
There you go. Just find out, because I'd be interested to see if this is something that's being done more often too.
Part of what frustrates me with this is DOT does not allow them on DOT highways.
Nope.
They can only cross the roads, but sure, throw them out on the county road. Yeah,
Yeah.
where they become a worry for us. Yeah.
DOT doesn't want them out there.
Well,
They still go, it's illegal, I know, but again, people do what they're not.
I saw one rolling down Gordon Drive the other day.
It's
It had a
called-
plate on it. I don't know. I didn't see what plate it was from, but.
There was a time in my life where we referred to that as job security. That people are going to break the rules.
Well, until further investigation on, by me and anybody else that may wish to do so, I'm going to let this one die a natural death. Item 14, Mr. Ung, approve compliance of Woodbury County as a certified local government.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is regarding Woodbury County's existing status as a certified local government, but to point out that we haven't complied with the requirements set by the state for quite some time. We are at risk of being removed from this certification, per my discussions with Dr. Paula Moore, simply because in the past, they've had a hard time getting in contact with the board and getting an answer on this question. So they've just kind of let us remain certified, so to speak, but at some point they have to, get an answer from us. So hopefully that's forthcoming. The background is, I don't know if I'm the only one on the historical committee that's been spoken to about this, but Jim Jung, one of the co-chairs of that committee, along with Supervisor Taylor, Jim Jung has repeatedly mentioned that this should be brought up to the board. And as I say in the item, in lieu of the next historical committee meeting being set, since I don't think it's been set yet by either of the co-chairs, that we should either, I just don't know if, as neither the chair of that committee or this board, if I'm the best contact person to promise on behalf of the board an answer to this question. But I do think I should bring it up as they do deserve an answer on this. Again, there's no immediate financial impact, so it's not something as if we would lose on some funding of a project we have going on right now. But we do have a needs assessment on the building. We will have substantial needs for the courthouse, as we all know. So at some point, there may be grants that have this as a prerequisite. The requirements are pretty simple. They are staff time is required to generate annual reports to the state. Likely, we would designate an employee or building services. And there is a required commission. There is record in the backup of a resolution setting that up, and that was obviously a couple decades ago. But that is a required step, and Madison County, I believe, is the county that is kind of a model. If we want to look at how they set that up and how they post that and on their website. But my thought, and this isn't necessarily a recommendation if there's no objection to it, just the natural sunsetting of the historical committee if there's no further need for it, or if the work of that committee could be blended into this commission. It would simply, the members could simply change from being part of a special committee to being part of a commission by agreement, and would report these annual reports to the state. There is a recommendation or requirement for members of that committee to be in different sectors of society, rural areas, different job experiences and such. I think we have a pretty good mix of that already on the historical committee. So I wouldn't be opposed to adding this, as soon as possible, because that is one of the requirements, or adding it and then letting the other committee sunset and having the roles of that committee be done through here. I don't have a strong opinion on that, but that will be, to some extent, a chair decision as far as forming this commission. So the contact information for Dr. Paula Moore is included in the email, the phone and email. She's more than willing to, as you see, call in, answer calls, answer questions, and give guidance on that. The other thing we need to do is, and I was hoping that there could be an answer already from the auditor's office, but I'm not sure there's enough time to look at this old resolution. But there is an old resolution here, and if it is in effect, then there's no need for the county to do anything formally. But if it's not, then we should reach out again. The auditor's office, I'd request to reach out to Dr. Moore and craft a resolution that will address this and set up this commission and ensure that we are certified and meet the requirements.
Mr. Chair.
Sir.
So I feel a little, I appreciate this coming forward because I wasn't even aware it was a thing.
Yeah.
We met about every 2 weeks for almost 8 months, and as far as them getting in touch with us, I think in all of those meetings I've never heard of it. So I think it sounds good. It sounds like everything we're already doing. So the first to meet 3 times a year, I think we've met something like 20 over the last year. So I think it's a good thing. Sounds like we need to kind of stamp what it is that we're already doing and make sure that we're a certified local government. But just so, I hadn't received any contact from anybody as far as them wanting this. So just,
and that's why
strange thing.
I know that's
nobody's
why
getting back in touch with us.
That's why I brought it up to the board.
Yeah.
And frankly, as Jim Jung being co-chair of the committee, my initial response was put it on the agenda. But, it's here now, so.
Sounds good.
Any heartburn on the commission taking over for the purpose of the historical committee, or?
I think unless there are vast differences, just reading through this, it
Really
seemed
don't.
like we check about every single block that's already on here. Electing a chair, meeting at least 3 times, having an interest in historic preservation. The only thing I think that's different would be the terms. So one of the things that after the auditor's office maybe is in contact, that might be a first of the year sort of thing, and it seems like that might be a good reset, because right now it's, a 1-year thing, but you could have a situation where somebody serves 2 or 3 years, it looks like it's staggered, or 2 to 4 years. 2 have to be for 4 years, 2 for 3, and 2 for 2, so my 2 cents would be look at after the first of the year, but in the interim, in the meantime, have somebody contact them and certify that we are meeting the spirit of the law, maybe not the letter right now.
Yeah, I agree. We're already doing it. Let's just make it work and make sure we're still certified.
Kind of like we're not living together, we're getting married and making a living now.
Yeah. It was nice to see some of these old names out of the past, so.
Yeah.
Well, I'd move to request the auditor's office work with guidance from the State Historical Society of Iowa. If you could please pass that on to Pat. To update the Historical Preservation Resolution if needed, and to direct the chairman to reestablish the Historic Preservation Commission with the same guidance.
Second.
Motion by, motion by Young, second by Radig. Further question?
And will that be after the first of the year, or is that something right now that we'd be?
I don't think it's specified, so, obviously guidance has to be received, and the resolution should be mentioning it before it's actually formed, so
Okay.
yeah, it wouldn't be like tomorrow.
Okay. That sounds good.
I'm busy tomorrow.
Oh, you're busy tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Doing water source for Pearson.
Further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Mr. Chair, would you prefer I get in contact with Dr. Moore, or would you like to relay?
I guess if you're volunteering, I will say yes, because I was, like Mr. Taylor, I was unaware of this item.
Very well.
All right,
So I
thank
brought it up.
you. Passes 5-0. Reports on committee meetings. Sir.
2 of them for the good of the board. The IJR, Interstate Justification Report, met this morning. I represented Woodbury. Mayor Scott was there representing the city of Sioux City, and John Winkle from the city of Sergeant Bluff, as well as DOT and other entities. So we're getting down to, this has been quite the process, but they've gone through the 3 different areas of interest: architectural, geological, historic preservation, storage tanks, and we're sort of weighing them down in a metric to be able to discern. The southernmost area is the one that looks like we are eliminating based on the farm ground, concentration, wetlands, and historic sites. It's taken a long time because there's so many different variables, including the long-eared northern bat as an endangered species, and really getting into the weeds on some of that. What we're trying to do next is figure out between the 2 remaining sites in the middle and north, which site is most likely to do a noise study, and it's got to be done before winter and the winds pick up. Otherwise, we're going to spend costs in 2 different areas, and that doesn't make sense to do. So 30 to 60 days, and then the DOT is going to run it through. Even before that happens, some technical study. Mark, am I fumbling on anything that I need to?
Yeah, the next step that'll be undertaken is to get the project management team back together. This is the technical committee from DOT, the consultant, and the county that go over the issues of impacts with utilities, impacts with wells, and those other items out there. And what they're trying to do right now is to focus on which is the more feasible of the 2 sites. Their entanglements, as Supervisor Taylor said, were very similar. They're both utilizing the northern central central interchange locations that were identified ahead of the public hearing we had in 2016. The southern one, as he said, appears to be the one that we're eliminating because one thing he didn't mention was that we need a new rail crossing there. And typically those are very difficult to negotiate without giving up 2 rail crossings to get one new one. The northern and central options for the interchange would both use the existing 235th Street interchange. So there was a lot of, it's really been pared down looking at utility, wetland, wildlife, building, and other impacts to narrow down to those last 2. The plan's then to take this to the project management team. We should be meeting within the next 2 weeks to see if there's one that should be recommended over the other. I think that pretty well summarized what.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have one more.
Number 2.
Rolling Hills had their meeting on September 19th at 2 o'clock. I thought it was a great meeting, and really the discussion twofold, House File 2456 and the different services that are going to be required based on the legislation. Hasn't really come forward with how all of it's going to be funded, but started talking about that versus Woodbury County and making sure that there's a successful transition plan. The CEO was asked which is the priority, and asked that as well of the board, and I thought it was very, very encouraging that the priority is the successful transition of Woodbury County. They even talked about the change in location for the governance board meetings, for staffing determinations, and I'll make a copy of this for everyone. Looking at the transition plan, including the governance board having non-core funding requests on decisions, developing a budget with Woodbury County, and as a contingency without, should we not meet certain conditions of the MOU. I am very excited that Dawn Menser, the CEO, has met with Midstep Goodwill, Schessler, ARC, Unity Point, St. Luke's, scheduled a meeting with the Sioux City Schools, and has a meeting scheduled with the Sanford Center. So I think all of those are very, very positive, and also laid out some of the staffing decisions and received some input from the board, and I was very pleased that they asked in turn, what we felt we might need as far as either a consultant for an interim time or a site coordinator, and so some of those discussions are being had, but I think that those are all very, very good news for Woodbury County. So wanted to let you know.
Thank you. Anybody else?
We had Sioux Rivers today. Pretty healthy discussion on whether or not to approve this CARF certification or accreditation for the jail alternatives program because it's currently under the Sioux Rivers region. Basically, we voted to approve it contingent upon that accreditation flowing over to the new region. The discussion we had last month that we brought before you on the Lamar School superintendent not allowing the billing of insurance or Medicaid for the counseling services. They've got a number of that now. It would roughly cost about $80,000 because they spend about $160,000, usually half is billable. So there's discussion of meeting with the Lamar School Board on October 8th to discuss whether or not they want to have counselors in there just half of the year or if they want to allow us to bill for those services.
What can I just ask? What was the argument against billing?
The superintendent believes that if you allow them to bill, then they shouldn't be given free offices inside their building, and it's kind of like just allowing a restaurant to come in and serve food to the kids, or allowing a car insurance company to come in and just sell car insurance exclusively to kids. It's totally different. This is a contract, you know, where they agree with the region that the region's going to use this provider in their school to provide counseling services. So if they don't want to allow them in there because they're going to bill, then we should just change the contract or just be done with it. It doesn't make sense.
Right, and one of the things that I think Rolling Hills is going to look at is making sure that there's billable insurance and Title 19 Medicaid, because otherwise you could have somebody coming in, and think about this for a second, family with an income of $400,000 or $500,000, and the county is picking up the cost of those services, and the parents may have two different insurance companies. So we're bailing them out and saying, don't bill them. You're providing access for these students that otherwise maybe not having them. So I know it may be a different philosophy.
They made the comment that we were ripping off the taxpayer, that you're taxing people for these services and they're not providing them. But the point is to not rip off the taxpayer, to bill insurance and Medicaid when it's available.
Because the county money's the easy money.
Right.
And it's easier not to, and I think Supervisor Potabom, we alluded to, billing's difficult, right? It takes some time, it takes some effort, you have to go back and forth. So I think that there's maybe some different thoughts.
I was amazed when I found out that most of them weren't billing, because you're right, it's easier to just take the county money than to bill the insurance companies. And easier doesn't make it right.
And then on a billing note, positive note, at the Crisis and Stabilization Center, there has now been 2 instances where United Healthcare has paid the bill for somebody that was staying there. So we now have our first 2 ever paid. The United Healthcare was the first one. Congratulations, United Healthcare. The other 2 have still yet to pay for any, but they're still billing. So.
Bring up one last thing as the Sioux Rivers guys. One of the discussions at Rolling Hills was about period 13. And as you know, period 13 is when you reconcile after the fiscal year and what needs to be paid out. I think that we're going to find ourselves, my assumption, Plymouth and Sioux counties, assuming moving to another region, Woodbury moving to another region. And as of that July, there's going to have to be allocations made for that previous fiscal year. So if there's a discussion to be had about the transition that kind of lasts 2-3 months and that month into, you know, it's not going to be as clean and neat and easy as, well, July 1st, now Rolling Hills or Northwest Iowa Care Connections, there's going to have to be some, you see what I'm saying, a little bit of overlap where, hey, we're the 3 of us, even though we're not together, we're still responsible for some, you know, interim gap last bills, however that works out. That needs to maybe be a discussion at some point and just.
Well, transition's brought up at the end of every meeting in general discussion, or actually right before general discussion. But mostly it's been discussing what they're planning on doing or what they're trying to do. So that would be something worth bringing up. What is it, July? So.
Yeah, and we'll actually be budgeting. This board will start budgeting January.
Right.
Which is kind of an odd thing. You're in the region, but not, you know, but for budgeting purposes. That's why I'm glad that the CEO and the governance board, I mean, they have a timeline that they've laid out that I think is just great for Woodbury County and for them and different proposals. So I'll make a copy and make sure everybody has this, but I think it's very systemic, programmatic, and well thought out.
I guess if you could get a list of specific questions to ask for me, or Matthew, whichever one. or both of us.
Along the lines of Don Metzner reaching out, that was discussed at the governance board meeting as far as providers. Woodbury County Coordinator Patty Erickson Putnam did say that there has been absolutely no connection from her with her department. That was brought up.
Well, 4 of them, including Patty, were there and spoke to Dawn afterwards. So.
I'm not disputing it.
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying
what was
that.
said.
But she said they hadn't talked to her at all.
Yeah.
I think the context was maybe she wants them to come meet at their office, but.
And my understanding is that she has since agreed to that, and so.
Well, that was not shared.
Well, and that may be a timeline.
It was also not shared that they met at the region meeting there either, so.
Yeah.
So there is communication either way. That's it, that's all I got.
Marty? Nope. Round 2 of citizen concerns.
Seeing all the citizens here.
Item 17, board concerns. We were informed that the sheriff's office was not awarded a grant from MERD for, I think it was $130,000 and change for a parking lot grant at the training center. I believe we should probably look at something with the county engineer to gravel or crush concrete the lot out there and see if we can put something together and or what the cost will be. So, okay, good. So can you bring us something? Yes. Thank you. Any other board concerns? We are adjourned.
Oh, my microphone was off the whole time.